Hey, Freedom Nation, it's Jeff here with another episode of the Freedom Nation podcast. On today's show, I have Jeff Russell. Jeff is an entrepreneur, started his career in the corporate world, and finally figured out that he wanted to go off and start his own business and built a very, very successful business that he got offered a lot of money for. And he realized that he wasn't going to do that, but he was going to fire himself from his business. So stay tuned and hear Jeff's story on how he fired himself from his business.
All in you. Everything you're looking for, it's all in you. You gotta believe that it's all in you. Everything you're searching for, it's all in you.
Hello, Freedom Nation. It's Jeff here once again with another episode of the Freedom Nation podcast. And on today's episode, we're going to talk to Jeff Russell, who has an amazing Freedom Day story to tell. Jeff, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Jeff.
I know it's easy to remember, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you have such an awesome story. We went through it in the pre-show and really can't wait for you to tell it. So why don't we start off? Tell us your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, great question. I love talking about it because I didn't grow up with money and I didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family. So I knew nothing about starting a business. I knew nothing about being an entrepreneur. My dad was in the Army, so we moved from base to base every 2 to 3 years. So I was more like a little gypsy. But I also learned to hustle. And so I learned to paint fences, do lawns, do all that stuff. So I always I wasn't afraid to work. And I think that's one thing I did get from my dad was he had a good work ethic, right? You're here to serve your country, serve others. And so I really kept that. And I was the first in my family to go to college. So because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to grind it out. And my parents had $3,000. That didn't get you very far. So I had to get a lot of scholarships and kind of get through there. I did what came easy to me because I'm kind of lazy that way. And that was actually computer science. I actually started in pre-law. And so I got into law school and I was going to do that. And I was sitting in law libraries. I'm like, yeah, I cannot do this. This is not my thing. So I promptly dropped out. And like every college dropout, I'm like, maybe I need a break. So I decided I would drop out and become a DJ for Club Med in the Bahamas. So it's every parent's dream. Like, what does your son do? Oh, he's a DJ at some
He was going to be a lawyer, but now he's a DJ in the Bahamas. There we go.
Yeah. So once I did that for about a year, I decided, okay, you know what I need to do is go back to what was easy to me. And one of the things about that moving around every 3 years is there was no computers, no computer games. There was nothing like that. So my dad was luckily fascinated with computers and he bought at Radio Shack one of these TRS-80s, like probably 1K
with the tape
computer.
Drive, man.
With the cassette tape. And so growing up, if I wanted to play a video game, I had to make it myself. Yeah. So I was coding and creating games when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old in the early 80s, right? So this isn't like today. There's way much more. There's training. I was self-taught. So from that, I'm like, well, computer programming is easy. So I decided to do that. Then I went back, got my degree in computer science. So now my parents are back proud of me. And then as well, I got offered a couple of jobs, IBM and Xerox. And at the time, those were two big, huge companies. They were probably the biggest in America. And that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get a job with a Fortune 10 company if you could. And so I did. I chose Xerox because Xerox is where the mouse was invented, where GUI interfaces were invented. So at the time,
I didn't know that.
This is like late 80s, early 90s, Xerox had a great tech part in California and created a lot of cool stuff. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm into that. What I realized was after about 3-4 years, I get bored very easily and I like to do my own thing. And so one thing about corporate America is doing your own thing is not really an encouraged behavior. There's like, no. we got politics, we got clatter. You can't make your boss look bad so you can't really come up with new ideas. So, but I was a pretty smart guy. So after that, I went to work for Fairmont Hotels. I was there for many years. And then a big finance company, Allianz, and we owned Fireman's Fund. We managed $3 trillion worth of assets. So through there, I was kind of learning the skills of systems and procedures, which I didn't realize would come in very handy when I started my own business. Did that. And one of those last times, I was always laid off. No one ever fired me because I was a good worker. I did what I needed to do. So the last one, they gave me a year's salary to go away, and they gave me some career counseling. So, how to make your resume better. Did those Myers-Briggs tests and psychological tests. And then my advisor came back and said, Jeff, you know what? You actually shouldn't work for anyone else. You should start your own business. I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe that's why I'm pretty much unemployable.
As one of my friends puts it, she's genetically unemployable. So.
Absolutely. I didn't know it at the time. So there was no golden watch opportunity for me. I would kind of exit out of there. But I told him, I don't know anything about starting a business. That's nothing I know. And he goes, there's two ways to do this. You either go franchise or you do like a business opportunity. And in both of those, they'll show you how to do the business. So I'm like, great, sign me up. And so I had decided that because I came from finance as well, I like the equipment leasing business. And so I decided I would do that. So I went to St. Louis and then learned how to be a leasing broker. They taught me everything. And then as I'm kind of looking for customers, and they said, you got to make 100 calls a day. I'm like, fine, I do it. Like, I'm a very simple guy. You tell me exactly what I need to do to be successful, and I'll do it. I will pick up the garbage off the floor. I'll do anything. There's nothing beneath me. So, and I think, again, work ethic from my father being in the military, you do what you're told or what you see needs to be done without hesitation. So started doing that. I didn't make any money for 6 months, like not a penny. And luckily I had that 1 year salary.
Yeah, so the year salary though.
Hurting, right? But I'm like, something's got to give. And then boom, I did this one deal and I made $10,000. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. This is 20 years ago. So 10 grand, that was a good amount of money. And it was a lot of work though. I'm like, oh, okay. But you know what? I committed. I'm going to do it. And then I did another deal and it was a piece of medical equipment for a doctor. Now, then I realized, okay, when I finance a doctor, he just signs his name and the deal's done in 2 hours. If I sign an entrepreneurial business owner like me, it's 14 years of tax returns. You got to name a child after the bank.
Give half, at least 3 pints of blood, everything. And
this is when I and I probably always did this, follow the money and follow the easy money. You can earn $1 two completely different ways and you still end up with $1, right? And so I'm like, okay, one is 10 hours of my work, one's 30 minutes of work, but I still have the same dollar. I'm doing and it wasn't $1, it was $10,000. So I'm like, okay.
And divide the time spent by that same amount of dollars and it's a big difference.
Absolutely. And so I focus on medical equipment. So I became a medical equipment leasing company. And so what got interesting was I started doing a lot of cosmetic lasers, tattoo removal lasers, hair removal lasers. And again, this is about 17, 18 years ago. So it was early on. I actually ended up financing the first medical spa in America in Manhattan for a dermatologist. And he's like, yeah, I'm opening up this med spa. I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. I have no idea what that means, but
but I'm sure it takes some equipment. So let's talk about it.
Exactly. Right. It was easy to do. And so I got known as the medical cosmetic equipment guy. And,
there you go.
And then people would buy these lasers and they're like, doctors would come to me like, what do I do now? I'm like, okay, well, you bring in patients and use them. It's kind of simple. And they would say, do you know someone who's done this? So I'd say, well, I helped this doctor in Salt Lake or Newport Beach or Manhattan. Go talk to them. And so I didn't see that as a business. I thought it was just a value add. I was there to help people.
You're just connecting them.
People. Yeah, exactly. It was simple. But then the doctors would come back to me that I was sending them to and saying, "Hey, stop sending these people. I'm too busy doing stuff." I'm like, "Oh, okay. So you're too busy doing stuff. So why don't we go visit you all, interview you, and create a training program for you?"
Nice.
So, in that same realm of following the money, we created a training program for these physicians.
Hmm.
And it was around 2006. We started small, was doing well, and it was almost par with the financing revenue. So I had the two
There you go.
businesses. One was medical training and one was the financing. Then 2008 hit.
Mhm.
And those of us who've lived through 2008, we all know what happened. All the money dried up.
Yep.
So banks weren't lending. My biggest financing bank was General Electric, GE Healthcare.
Oh.
They had $1 billion that they would give. That just boom, gone.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, my financing business, the money turned off. But I had this medical training, which was going strong as ever. And so then I accidentally discovered, oh, there's this thing called diversification. It's good to kind of spread your wealth around, just like you would in your investment portfolio. You don't have everything in bonds or anything in stocks, right? You have a mixture. And so I discovered that. So by following the money, right, is kind of how this thread went. And then I opened up a medical practice with a physician partner of mine. So that was my
Interesting.
third business. And then COVID hit, and that wiped out my training business. Right. So I'm like, okay, we cannot do training anymore, right? Because you're not allowed to travel. And there was vaccination requirements and all this different stuff. I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? Luckily, I was very much a content guy. So, and this is one of my tips, always look at your internal processes, your internal data. Like, what information do you have? So we took it all and created online courses. And within probably 64 days, we were making more money than we were with our live training. And it continues to double the live training revenue. And we've been doing it for a couple of years.
I think a lot of companies realize that. Yeah.
So, because before we tried online training before COVID, no one wanted to do
Nobody
it.
likes it.
But everyone got acclimatized to doing it and like, well, I'll do it. So it's actually worked out really well. And so that's kind of, and it was during COVID, I went to my accountant and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? My business was just wiped out. Like, I cannot do training. I can't bring anyone in. Not going to do this. I'm like, and he goes, what are you worried about? I'm like, well, because I got to grind it, right? That's what I do. I'm wired to move forward. He goes, you have enough money. You don't have to work a day of your life. I'm like, oh, I'm like, okay, that's good to know. So, and I'll tell you that relief, like it took the pressure off. And boy, did I start to think clearly. So now all of a sudden, when you're under it, sometimes you can think very clearly and strategically quickly, but it drains you. But when you have this big weight that, you know what, you hit your freedom day, I'm like, now what I'm doing is optional. It's what I want to do, what I enjoy doing. And then that 3 years ago, I decided I'm going to work 10 days a month because I said, you know what, I'm a young guy. I'm 52 at the time. I got a lot left in me and I like helping people and doing stuff. It doesn't have to be for money, right? It's just whatever's enjoyable. And so that's when I really started. I went from 30 days a month to 20 days a month to 15 days a month to 10 days. And next year, my hope is to get down to 5 days a month of doing, as I can't stop because I like to help people and create. Sure. And so I turn my businesses into ATMs. They generate money whether I'm there or not. And one of the benefits to that I discovered kind of by accident was it increased the valuation of my business. Because a business that doesn't require the owner is much more valuable than a business that does require the owner.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. And I think your story, I hope for the half of our audience that listens that are business owners, I hope you got what Jeff was talking about there. Not only did he go along, so many people stay with just this one thing that they do, and they're really good at it, and they're really successful. And then something happens like COVID, something happens like 2008, and it blows them up. And Jeff was smart enough to say, all right, well, let's try this. Let's try that. Let's try some of these other areas, not necessarily thinking that he was going to make that much money at it. And that effectively that became your business as a result of it.
Yeah. And I always try and focus on number one is to help people and provide value.
Yeah.
So if I can't do that, the money doesn't come. So it's not money first, it's providing value. Second, though, is if I'm going to do something, I need to have at least a 50% profit margin. Because what I learned very early on, the margins are what allow you to sleep at. In many of my business, they're actually closer to 85%, right?
Nice.
So that means things can go wrong and I'm not losing sleep. Like COVID, right? I could have gone years with the money in the bank. We pivoted and didn't have to do that. But I never like to be beaten by someone else. I like to always be the decision maker of when I'm going to be done. And so and I think many entrepreneurs are like this. We have a spark that, you think I'm down? No, I'm not down. And then we start thinking outside of the box, and that's where the interesting ideas come from.
I think that's the point that you have to work towards. I don't think that's something that it's a natural thing for most people to be able to do that. It's something that takes repetition of, okay, well, so I can do that, but what if I do this? What if I do this? What if I do this? And keep trying and keep thinking of different ways and being creative. That's, I think, the talent that we develop as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And it's those filters that you have to always live by. So it's like, do I do this? Does it get to me where the end game is? And for me, the end game's not any one of my businesses. It's the big end game, right? Yeah. So for me, I just find that filtering allows me to stay more focused and make the right decisions. And I say I work 10 days a month. I work as much in 10 days a month as I did when I was 30 days a month, but I'm extremely focused now. Like, it's almost like, that Friday before you go on your family vacation to Disney, you're getting stuff down, you're answering getting everything off your plate so you can enjoy your vacation. Well, that's what it's like every day I work my 10 days. Yeah. So I find there's no distractions. I know that I'm not like today's my last day. So that's it. So I've got everything has to be wrapped up today because there's no tomorrow. It has to wait till next month. And so it just, that forces you to kind of get to your freedom day faster.
Yeah. Well, but it also helps you it's Parkinson's law. The gravity of a situation is completely related to the time that you allot to it. So if you give yourself 80 hours a week, you're going to take 80 hours a week to get projects done. If you give yourself 10 hours a month or 10 days a month, you're going to get all that stuff done in 10 days a month if you're honest with yourself. I know a lot of entrepreneurs will go, oh, well, I love what Jeff's saying, and I'm going to work 10 hours or 10 days a month. But if I don't get stuff done, then I can still work at home, or I can still do. No, you've got to do that. And that was one of the things I know for me as I sold my primary interest in a business last year, and it was my freedom day. And I started to look at things, and I look at things differently today. I not only look at what new thing I'm bringing into my life, is it going to generate revenue? Yes, that's important. But I also now, and I think you're kind of the same way, I also came to the realization, is this going to require a lot of Jeff's time to do that? And if it requires a lot of Jeff's time, and in either Jeff here, it's not going to happen. And I haven't gotten to the 10 days a month, but I work 4-day weeks, and that's it. I take most Fridays off. If anything, I go into the office for the morning and goof off for half the day and then go home because my wife's got to be there. That's, for me, I went from working 70, 80-hour work weeks down to like 30, and I make double the amount of money I used to make at this point.
Absolutely. And it's so true. And I'll just warn you, it's going to be difficult because you know what? Friday at 3:00, your biggest client has time available for you. Yeah. And so one thing that I'm very upfront with all my team and my customers, this is a selling point, actually. I tell people, look, I only work 10 days a month. So if you need to get a hold of me, it's going to be very difficult. Like there is a billionaire who's we're trying to connect something for the last 2 weeks, and he wanted to do 5 p.m. on a Monday. And I'm like, you know what? I don't work. When I do work, I don't work past 3 because I'm not at my best. So that's one thing I've learned. I work at my best in the morning, and I try and wrap up anything by noon. I don't like to do anything in the afternoon. And I just, his EA today, I had my EA talk to his EA saying, yeah, can't do it. So now we're booking like third week into November. And this guy's got big money. He's a game changer, but he respects it, actually. He goes, yeah, if Jeff doesn't have time, it's fine with me. Like, this is how he's living. So, and my staff know it too. So they know you don't send me an email on Friday afternoon, expect any type of response whatsoever. Right. And they know when I'm working. But what I do in those downtimes, I create a massive amount of value. And some of it's charity work. Some of it's like opportunities. I had lunch with this guy a few weeks ago, and it turned into, I got in an early in apartment building investment right before it went to the public. So it's just like, I'm doing this conversion and all that. We're going to need, because you want that first round of money, right? That's where you want to be. And that's the other thing I've learned. There's different categories of first in, second in, fifth in. Most people are fifth in. You've already missed the money making.
Yeah, you've missed the good stuff at that point. And
if I was grinding it in the old days, I'd be looking, oh, it's 2:00. I missed lunch. Like you just work through lunch, right? Where it was great to have that day off, sit at the golf clubs, chat. Nothing, no agendas on either of us. But it was like, I'm looking to bulk up my real estate investment portfolio in my family office. He has a deal. This could work really well. It fits my parameters. And so there's opportunities that you're looking for that come to you. So it's really weird.
Yeah, totally understand that. What's new in your world? Is there anything that you're working on that you want to share?
I actually just released my 4th book.
Nice.
A couple of months ago, and it was called Fire Yourself First. And it really is the story of how when I got my Freedom Day, was to fire myself from my business. And I'm a simplifier. I don't like complicated things. I don't want a dashboard or KPI. I don't want 40 KPIs. I want 4. Right. As soon as I turn 50, I can't do more than 3 or 4 things. So do not prioritization has got to be succinct. It's got to be very clear for me. And so I looked at how did I get to, everybody was asking me, how do you get to 10 days? I'm like, here's the manual. I'm not a consultant. I don't have workshops. There's nothing I'm selling you. This is everything I do and all the tips and the tricks on how I do it. So I basically summed it down to 4 steps. First one, a lot of people who sell their businesses don't do, and they don't have a purpose bigger than themselves. So when they sell their business, they get the big check, they don't know what to do. I didn't want that to happen. I've had some good friends getting big 8-figure checks that I'm talking off the bridge, like they're ready to jump because they just,
you have to replace what you're doing with something. You can't have a void of just nothing. You're not going to sit on the front porch and whittle wood for the rest of your life.
Absolutely, right? And they don't realize that. And it has to be something like inside that is really important for them. And then the second thing is you got to have a team that can run without you. And that many entrepreneurs are very bad at this because they hire people that require them to be there. They will not make a decision. You'll be in a meeting and everyone will look at the owner, right? Like you. And so it's like, you're not fostering that autonomous team. And I call it, I need to move to an autonomous business, one that runs without me. And so hardest thing in any business is hiring people. I've hired psychopath, pathological liars. I've had A players that were amazing, people who've tried to sue me, and people who've made me millions of dollars. There's a big range in there. And so I created maybe 5-6 years ago this 11-step hiring process. And that's in the book. I'm like, you know what? You got to have the right people. The questions I ask people are like, what did you do to improve your knowledge in the last year? You'd be amazed at how many people have done nothing. Well, if you're not a self-learner, you're not good for an autonomous business because you need to be able to make decisions without me, the owner, being there. So I need someone who's kind of that self-learner. And then the third of the 4 steps is scorecards and dashboards. These are KPIs. I kind of split them up and make them fun. The owner has the dashboard, like on the car's dashboard, but I give all my employees scorecards, like in a basketball game, you get a scoreboard there, so that they know what number they're responsible for, and all of their numbers go into mine. Because if you're going to let your business run without you, you need to know 3 or 4 leading and lagging indicators that show you how your business is going, or you're going to get you're going to get pulled back in. Right. So, and sometimes this takes 6 months to do. You test this number, it works, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work. Like something was missed. So this is an evolution. You don't have to, it's not done tomorrow. And then what's your exit going to look like? For me, my exit was, I love my business. I love my customers. I love doing it. So why would I sell it? So it's not an exit yet. It's to run without me and basically operate like an ATM. So it's making money whether I'm there or not. So which exit is right for you? And you may be to the point where, hey, the exit, the sell is, that's what you want. Nothing wrong with that. But if you run it as an ATM, you're preparing it for the sale because you're not required to be there. So that's my latest project. And I thought it was fun. We trademarked Fire Yourself First. It was funny. No one's done it before. So
that's shocking. I could have sworn there was a book by that name, but that's outstanding.
Yeah, there is. It's my book. So that's led on to, we created a website, fireyourselffirst.com, and you can go there and download the 11-step hiring process, a clarity map to find your purpose, and a lot of great tools that'll help you out.
That is awesome.
That's my latest project. So, and I just love giving back and helping people, because it's listening to these podcasts like this. Everyone's going to take 1 or 2 nuggets, and I really hope it's going to improve the life of them and their family and reduce the stress, and just show them that you may be stressed right now, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's amazing, right? So you're going to get there, right? It's just a simple process to follow.
That is fantastic, Jeff. All right. So now let's transition to the fast 5 questions. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So first question, you wake up in the morning, business is totally gone. You have a laptop computer, a place to stay, food and drink. What are you going to do first? And $500 by the way.
Well, my accountant says I have a lot more than that in the bank, so I'm not really worried. But if my bank was my bank account, so that's one thing. 50% of my profits hidden. Boom.
Nice.
And not hidden from the IRS. Just let's move it out and make sure we have taxes are accounted for. You need to do that. And that Profit First was a great read for me. And it's made a big difference. You need to do that. But because I've read 6 books a month for 20 years, I know a lot about a lot. And I would just look at who needs help and who's got a who can write a check. So sometimes the people who need the help don't see the value in your help and can't write a check. Well, if I've got to get back on my feet, you got to be a check writer.
Love it. What's your biggest business mistake you've ever made?
I wanted to do everything myself and I didn't hire early enough. I do that over and over again.
You cannot fire yourself if you have nobody there to actually do the work.
Yeah.
What's the best book that you would recommend for our audience?
Your audience is, I think, a lot of people who maybe want to get into business for themselves or are in business for themselves. The best book I ever read probably is The One Thing by Gary Keller.
Okay.
Because you know what our biggest problem is? Distractions. Ooh, there's a squirrel. Ooh, there's a squirrel. Look at that silver ball, right? And The One Thing kind of trains you to focus on the first domino, the most important activity that's going to get all the other activities done. So it may be easy to do this over here, but if you can do something a little bit more difficult and knocks down 10 things, do it. Right? So you have to really think about that.
Love it. What's a tool that you use in your business every day that you might recommend?
Surprisingly enough, it's a very old tool. We have all these AI tools and stuff that we use, and maybe those AI tools will take over from me right now, but Evernote. And one of the things I like Evernote is that I discovered how to put a widget on my iPhone of the top 3 tasks. So I'm hyper focused. When I turn my phone on, I have the weather, my calendar, and I have a widget that tells me the top 3 things I'm working on today. And so that acts as like an automatic filter, and it really takes the top 3 things from the Evernote task bar. And so that's how it is. So I'm like, this is so simple. I've tried other things like Outlook and that and reminders, and none of that was simple. I just wanted to look at it. Okay, working on this. Good.
Yeah. Well, and that gets back to the one thing too. It's like, okay, what are the things I need to focus on? I do that in my own business. I'm even lower tech. I love Evernote and I use it, but I've got a sheet that I printed out, and it's basically got 3 different categories. Usually I use them as businesses, 3 different businesses that I've got. And then what are the key tasks, 5 of them that need to be completed this week for that to drive the business forward, hit my objectives and key results. And then all I have to do is just take from those and build my 3 things per day. And that works out 15 tasks, 5 days, 3 key things a day. It's the easiest system I've ever seen. So right along the same lines as what you're doing with Evernote. And you'll accomplish so much more because you don't have this list of 80 tasks that you never get through ever.
Yeah. You got to chunk it down to and always filter everything. What is the truly? Sometimes it's urgent because of time. Yeah. It's not the most important, but you have to do it. Like IRS filings coming up, you kind of have to do that, right? Like, or you do an extension. But anyways, that's why I'm doing.
Well, and fans of the show, I use an acronym IDEA. So it's identify what needs to be done, delegate what you can, eliminate what you can, automate what you can. And after I've gotten through all those filters, anything that's left, probably I have to do at that point.
Yeah. That's
until
awesome,
I figure
brother.
out
Love
Robot Jeff and I can make Robot Jeff do it all with AI and then I won't have to be involved at all. I haven't figured that part out yet.
Yeah, I actually just uploaded. So Claude.io allows a 30,000 word prompt. And so my 125 page book is just about 30,000 words. Okay. So you can do that as a prompt, upload a book, and then what would Jeff say? And it will do that. It's amazing. Wow. I'm actually learning better ways of doing stuff. So it actually took everything in my book and created like a FAQ, like it almost was a brain dump, because when you look at the 4 steps of running a business, it really is everything. I don't realize I'm doing time management and hiring processes and creating SOPs, but these are all part of a business. But when you actually have that written down, then you could actually use it as a prompt over and over again for your own internal use. So I may be using that for my team. What would Jeff say? They're just going to upload my 30,000 page book, and it actually gives a very accurate of how I would solve something. Wow, so I am excited about how AI and where it's going. So it'll be interesting.
Honestly, it's a little clunky at the beginning, but I see it. Everybody's so concerned about it, and I'm thinking to myself, the only people I would be concerned that if I was concerned would be the people who aren't adopting it and they're going to be left behind at this point. Absolutely. So I think the speed of business is going to be so important, and if you're not looking at ways to identify AI, just think of it. I was getting ready to send out a follow-up. I had a networking meeting or a networking group that I organize, and I was just getting ready to send out the follow-up. Hey, it was a great meeting and all this. And I saw this little AI button on the email program that I use. And I was like, I hadn't used that before, and hit that. And it says, tell what it was. And so I just kind of give a brief explanation of what it was, and bam, hit the thing, whacks off about a 150 to 200 word email, pretty close to exactly the way I would have written it. at that point. So it
Wow.
ended up taking me less than 5 minutes to do that instead of staring into a completely empty screen for an hour trying to come up with the wording I was going to use.
Love it. Yeah, that's
Amazing.
brilliant.
So last
That's
question.
making it easier.
What is your definition of freedom?
It's funny. I trademarked this a few years ago. I've been actually good. And that's another tip for you guys. IP. Make sure you patent, trademark, copyright your stuff, because there's most of the value on the S&P 500 is non-tangible patents, copyrights, and trademarks, not physical stuff. So it's important to do this. I trademark live a life well lived.
Nice.
Because when I was probably about 40, 45, I'm like, okay, I've accomplished all this stuff. Have I really lived the life that I dreamt that I was going to live when I was in my teens and 20s? And I realized, no, I didn't. Right. And that's when I started. I do a scholarship to my high school, right? Like actually 3 scholarships, because I came from nothing. Right. And my parents, it's a lot. And so I want people who've been in a similar situation to get a step up. And so I do that, live a life well lived. And I ask myself, when I'm filtering, do I do this or not? Especially more personal family things. Would this really attribute to my living a life well lived? And that is really my key of freedom, is I can do what I want when I want and with the people that I want. And I truly have self-content, well-being, that I am living the life well lived.
I love it. Fantastic. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being on. You shared with everybody places that they could find you. But if you want to just share that one more time, what's the best way if somebody wants to learn more about you or get in contact with you? What's the best way?
Sure. All those free book resources are at the book's website, which is fireyourselffirst.com. So that's fireyourselffirst.com. So you can download them there. At the very bottom are the connect with me. So LinkedIn, I'll just warn you, is the best way to get in touch with me. I'm on Facebook and other ones, but I don't check them as often as I probably should. So that's a great way. If you have any questions, I love to help you.
Brilliant. Well, Jeff, thank you very much for being on the show today and sharing your story. It was very inspiring for those of us that are continuing along our Freedom Day journey. It's an inspiration to hear what you're doing right now.
Awesome. It was awesome to be here, Jeff.
Thank you. And folks, we really do these shows for you. And I bring people like Jeff on to share their stories so that hopefully it makes you excited and it makes maybe his story resonates with you and you can follow along that path. We do these Tuesdays and Thursdays, so make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you give us an upvote, a 5-star, wherever you're listening or watching this at. Make sure that you let us know that you exist out there. And if you want, give us a comment, ask a question. Love to interact with you that way. So thanks a lot, and we will see you guys back here the very next time.
All in you, everything you